Good afternoon folks, welcome to Portugal where I am on the launch of Honda's new XL750 Transalp. Good afternoon folks, it's been quite a short day. We've had half a day on the Transalp, which was on-road and off-road, and there's a few changes, not a lot of them, but have they made a big difference to how the bike handles? Well, that's what I am here to tell you, and that's what I've been trying to find out today. First and foremost, before I go through how the bike handles and how it performs, I'm going to tell you what's new for this year. So we have got, at the top of my list, we've got new switchgear. So we've got much tidier switchgear, which is shared across a few of the other Honda models. It's much less cluttered and much easier to use. We've got a new TFT, which is optically bonded to make it easier to read, which is all good, which still has the Honda Road Sync, so you can do all the turn-by-turn nav, calls, music, all that sort of stuff with a Bluetooth headset. We've got new warning lights when the ABS is triggered. The rear indicators and the front indicators will flash to signify that you're braking heavily, and we've got self-cancelling indicators. Suspension wise, we've got the same Showa separate function big piston forks that we had before, which are non-adjustable, but what Honda have done, and this is quite a big change and I'm going to come on to it in a little bit, is they've updated the settings within the suspension. So we've got different preload and rebound settings at the front end and the back end of the bike. The final changes that we've got are fuel injection settings and throttle map settings, more distinction between the riding modes. I didn't really notice that, if I'm being completely honest, and the quick shifter has been updated. So how is it handled? On paper, they don't sound like very big changes, and I didn't expect to feel a massive change from the previous generation XL750. Having ridden it, it is quite a big difference, if I'm completely honest. The biggest change that I noticed in the way that the bike handled was the agility of it. There's more preload in the rear, there's more preload in the front, and there's different rebound settings in both ends of the bike basically. So the bike is sitting on a much more even keel than it did before. It used to squat quite a bit under power, so it was almost a little bit underdamped at the back, and it'd squat and it'd make the front end feel a little bit light. It's not something I really picked up on the launch, because you're just riding bat out of hell for leather on the launch, just trying to get to where you're going. It was when I got to ride one back in the UK that it kind of made itself known. The standard settings that they've put into this bike have changed that totally. So it sits a bit more on its nose, it feels a little bit more pointy, and it's much more agile. And I'm only talking about on the road. Yeah, I'm not talking about the off-road element that we did a little bit earlier on, because at the end of the day, 90% of Transalp owners, they will maybe do some very, very light green laning when they go to ABR Festival or something like that. But for the rest of the year, predominantly their bikes are going to be used on the road, and that is how Honda have pitched the Transalp and always have. Another big change, and this is another positive change, is the throttle connection. When I did the original launch of the Transalp, I was a little bit critical of the throttle connection, said it was a little bit snatchy in the initial opening of the throttle, which I seem to say about a lot of bikes apparently, according to people in the comments section. Honda have taken that and they've gone away and they've worked at it, and they have completely transformed the throttle connection. It is so much softer without losing any of that accuracy or that directness that was always there before. It was just a little bit too abrupt. So they've updated that, they've smoothed it out, and what that's made, slow speed control has got better, picking up the throttle coming out of a tight bend has got better, and also it's better when you're riding off-road, especially when you stood up on the pegs, and sometimes small body movements can just move the throttle slightly and it can make the ride a little bit cumbersome. That's all been sorted, that's all been smoothed out, and it is much better than before. As I said, I was talking about the on-road handling. When I said it's got more support under braking, it doesn't squat as much under acceleration, it feels more pointy and more agile, I was just talking about on-road. Has it made the bike any better off-road? I'm going to say it hasn't made it any worse, but having more preload in the back end and having more preload in the front end and different rebound damping, they're not things that you do. Normally, if you're going to be making a bike better off-road and you want to improve its off-road handling, you will be looking to sort of soften the thing up and add in a little bit of compliance, especially in a bike like this that isn't terribly focused in that off-road segment. That said, can it do the off-road stuff? We took on about a 4.5 or 5 kilometre fire trail earlier on. It was very hard packed gravel. It was very dry, very dusty, and it was complete polar opposite to the trails that we were riding last time we were in this exact same hotel riding on the launch of the Transalp a couple of years ago. That was hard packed clay and the bike felt a bit unwieldy. The front end didn't feel like it had got much composure or much directness when we were riding on the trails. It can still do it. It's good enough. It's never going to be as good as something like a Tenere 700 or a KTM 890 Adventure because they're much more focused bikes, but I don't think either of them are anywhere near as good as this is on the road in terms of the way it handles, the way it behaves and the way it reacts to your inputs when you're riding it on the road. It's absolutely brilliant. I loved it at the first launch and I still love it now. I think it's an absolutely great bit of kit, so that has not changed. If you're a current Honda Transalp owner and you're looking at it going, well, it looks pretty much like the old bike, yeah, it does. The new front end, I don't know if it's any better looking than the old front end. I don't think it really needed it. They've got some new decals at the side where the Transalp branding is a bit bigger and a bit more bold than it was previously. But to look at, there's not a lot of difference. So the only real people that it's going to apply to is if you're a previous, a first generation Transalp owner and you kind of felt as I did on the initial launch that you didn't like the snatchy throttle, or you thought that it was a little bit underdamped or undersprung at both ends. This update is going to be a big one for you. If you're a current Transalp owner and you've learnt to love the little quirks or the little foibles of the Generation 1 bike, live with it. It's a great bike in its own right. It is still, in my mind, this update has just reaffirmed it for me, that it's the best handling on-road midweight adventure bike that you can go out and buy. And given that that's how most people use their adventure bikes, i.e. mostly touring, mostly commuting, and a very light bit of occasional green lane work, I think Honda knocked it out of the park. That's how the Transalp's always been pitched, and that, for me, as they're shown with this update, is how it's always going to be pitched going forwards. Still a great bike, had a great day. We've also been riding the XL750X at this same launch. So we had the morning on the XL750, which was all on-road, and then we had the afternoon, which was on-road and off-road on the Transalp. So if you want to find out about the 2025 XL750X, go back to the Visordown channel. There is a video already there that you can check out about that one. But that's about all I've got to say about it, really. It's just better in a lot of little ways that will make a difference to a lot of current different Transalp owners. So if you've liked that video, folks, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe down below so you can stay up to date with all of Visordown's latest videos. And for all the news, reviews and motorcycle features, get yourself over to visordown.com. Thank you.